Good morning. Welcome to the Boise Unitarian Universalist Fellowship's virtual worship service. I'm Sharene Watsen, and I'm your celebrant for today's service. Let us take a moment to breathe together as we begin our service with a land acknowledgement.
As we gather together, we acknowledge that the land upon which our church and homes exist is the ancestral land stolen from the people of the Shoshone-Bannock, the Shoshone-Paiute, Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai, and Nez Perce nations, along with many other tribes whose names have been lost in history. We acknowledge that our presence here today is founded upon the exclusions and erasures of many indigenous peoples. With this acknowledgement, we wish to demonstrate our ongoing commitment to the work of dismantling the legacies of settler colonialism. We honor indigenous peoples' connection to the land and support their right to sovereignty.
Let us take one more grounding breath together. I invite you to take a moment to greet one another. So if you are comfortable, turn on your cameras and switch to gallery view so we can wave and smile and see each other's lovely faces this morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I see you all out there waving. Oh, and blowing kisses. Thanks, Tom. Whether you are zooming in from down the road, across the city, from another state, or across the ocean, you are welcome here. Whatever faiths you have known or religious practices you embody, if any, you are welcome here. Whoever you love and however you identify, you are welcome here. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. I want to take a moment to welcome those newcomers among us. We know it takes a lot of courage to check out a new community, and we're so glad you have joined us today. We invite you to introduce yourself in the chat so our community can warmly welcome you, and then fill out a newcomer card. We'll post a link in the chat so we can keep you up to date with all that is happening in our fellowship. We offer lots of options for gathering in virtual community, from meditation to yoga to social hours. We also have a upcoming event I want to highlight. The Climate Action Team is offering a 4-part monthly learning series on the Carbon Buddy Manual. It is an all virtual, and it begins October 26th, and details will be posted in the chat. It is our practice here at the Fellowship to donate 25% of our unpledged plate offering to support social justice ministries. For the month of October, it is the Suicide Prevention Hotline. They provide 24/7 free and confidential suicide and behavioral health crisis intervention, and are committed to ensuring that those served are heard and empowered with options to stay safe while addressing their personal crisis. 25% of our unpledged plate offering will go to them at the end of the month. We no longer have a special time for collecting our online offering while our services are virtual, but you can make your gift anytime by going to our website at boiseuu.org and clicking Give at the top right corner, or you could download the brand new giving app from Vanco to make sure your gift anytime during the service or after it. Your checks by mail are also welcome. Thank you in advance for your generosity. Today, we are joined by Reverend Monica Jacobson-Tennessen. She is the Minister of Community UU Church in Pasco, Washington, and has previously served congregations in Massachusetts and Oregon. She is a Meadville-Lombard Theological School alumna and a graduate of the Still Harbor Spiritual Direction Program. She currently lives in Western Washington with her spouse, 9-year-old daughter, and 2 mischievous Siamese cats. Her family's cats are named for Clarence Skinner, a Universalist minister, and Cecilia Payne Gaposchkin, a Unitarian scientist. And Reverend Monica is happy to geek out about the stories of both cats' namesakes, along with other pieces of UU history. Our theme for the month of October is cultivating relationships. And today in our service, we will explore relationships through the lens of hospitality practices and rituals and the importance of caring for strangers. In this time of so many challenges, we will explore what rituals of hospitality have to offer us here and now. Let us take a moment to breathe together. Fill your body with breath, knowing that our breath connects us to one another, to our bodies, and to our planet. Our breath offers us the opportunity for stillness, to tune in to our spiritual center, to listen deeply to our heart's own longing. As we listen to our opening poem, think of the thines and thous as people you may open your heart or your home to welcome. Thou art the song of my heart in the morning. Thou art the dawn of truth in my soul. Thou art the dew of the roses adorning. Thou art the woven whole. Thine is the grace to be steadfast in danger. Thine is the peace that none can destroy. Thine is the face of the need-driven stranger. Thine are the wings of joy. Thou art the deep, to the deep in me calling. Thou art a lamp where my feet shall tread. Thy way is steep, past the peril of falling. Thou art my daily bread. Thine be the praise of my spirit uplifted. Thou art the sea to each flowing stream. Thine be the days that are gathered and sifted. Thou art the deathless dream.
Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a heretic, convict, or spy? Would you harbor a runaway woman or child, a poet, a prophet, a king? Would you harbor an exile or a refugee, or person living with AIDS? Would you harbor a Tubman, a Garrett, a Truth, a fugitive, or a slave? Would you harbor a Haitian, Korean, or Czech, a lesbian, or a gay? Would you harbor a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a heretic, convict, or spy? Would you harbor a runaway woman or child, a poet, a prophet, a king? Would you harbor an exile or a refugee, or person living with AIDS? Would you harbor a Tubman, a Garrett, a Truth, a fugitive, or a slave? Would you harbor a Haitian, Korean, or Czech, a lesbian, or a gay? Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor me?
At this hour, in small towns and big cities, in living rooms and ornate sanctuaries, many of our sibling Unitarian Universalists are also lighting a flaming chalice, reminding us that we are part of a great community of faith. We join in this lighting in solidarity and community, reminding us that we are connected to one another and to a larger community of faith and love. If you have a chalice nearby, you are invited to light it with us this morning and share in the chat where your chalice is lit. May these dancing flames inspire us to fill our lives with the Unitarian Universalist ideals of love, justice, and truth. With our collective chalices lit in all our spaces, I offer you this call to worship and blessing from Andre Moll. This blessing was written in honor of two Unitarians, Martha and Waitzel Sharp, who during World War II dared to risk their own comfort in order to help save the lives of those in desperate need. All that we share is sacred, by Andre Moll. As we gather together, may we remember when you share with me what is most important to you, that is where listening begins. When I show you that I hear you, when I say your life matters, that is where compassion begins. When I open the door to greet you, that is where hospitality begins. When I venture out to bring you shelter, that is where love begins. When I risk my comfort to ease your suffering, when I act against hatred, violence, and injustice, that is where courage begins. When we experience the full presence of each other, because of our shared humanity, because of our difference, that is where holy gratitude begins. May this space be a table that is not complete until all are welcome. May this table be a space of beauty where together we create a series of miracles and where all that we share is sacred. May it be so. Come, let us worship together.
Is going to help us explore what helps us choose to be kind and helpful to others. It is called Tiny the God, and it's written by Becky Brooks. Once upon a time, there was a tiny, little, itty-bitty, very small, teeny little God named Tiny. She lived her life hearing stories of all the big gods, and well, let's face it, she was jealous. She knew she needed to think of something, some kind of special spark of an idea that would help make her existence meaningful. After watching humans for a long time, she hit upon something that just might work. Something to make people think, yeah, that Tiny has some really good ideas going. And this was it. This was the idea that's going to make her famous. You ready? Here it is. You are not alone. Pretty simple, huh? Very powerful. Tiny took the form of a very light breeze. It's going to sub in for her. Tiny is our breeze now. And in a voice so quiet that each person could only hear it in their own mind, she whispered to them, "You are not alone." Here's some of our books. You are not alone. Let's face it, sometimes when even when we're surrounded by people, we feel pretty lonely. And all the people she whispered to loved it. It was perfect, because who doesn't want to hear that? Pretty soon, Tiny was comforting people all over with, "You are not alone." Every evening, she took the form of the breeze and she whispered it in people's minds, going all around town, all around more than one town, all around the world she traveled. Until one day, she encountered someone who wasn't comforted at all. When Miriam heard Tiny's words in her mind, instead of feeling comforted, she felt agitated. Something was kind of off about it. She kept saying it to herself over and over. "You are not alone. You are not alone." She tossed and turned that night. She couldn't sleep. In the morning, she went to read the newspaper. It's a very small newspaper. And instead of skimming across the articles, she found herself drinking in every single story, absorbing all the details. She was only halfway through when she found herself crying. "I am not alone," she said. "I am connected to every one of these people. They live in my town and my country and my world. They love their children like I love mine. They're scared sometimes, and so am I. They hurt like I hurt. I am not alone. I can help." Tiny was surprised, to say the least. It hadn't occurred to her that someone might think of it in that way. So Tiny kept watch over Miriam to kind of monitor this interesting development. Miriam and one coworker of hers met up and were discussing, they were online in a meeting, and they were discussing an ordinance that they had hoped that their city council would pass. And Tiny noticed Miriam immediately set to writing a letter to her representative, her and this coworker. Tiny noticed when Miriam turned in her grocery order, she always bought a few extra things and left them for her neighbors on their doorstep, attached to a colorful, kind note. She noticed Miriam had tears in her eyes when she joined her congregation's online worship, virtual worship with her computer. And Miriam, when she heard her favorite hymn through the small speakers, got out her phone and made an online donation. Show teeny tiny phone. An online extra donation to her congregation. She watched Miriam write postcard after postcard to her friends and her family, near and far. She waved to the dog walkers who passed on her street, friendly with even the folks who were only in her neighborhood, to do some job or to help out with some task. Miriam strung up colorful lights in her living room window and signs of kindness in her lawn. But most importantly for Tiny, she noticed when Miriam received a phone call one evening from a friend she hadn't heard from in a long time, and his voice was shaking. "I'm having a hard time," he said. And he started to tell her about his troubles. He began to cry. So Miriam got herself comfortable in an armchair with a warm blanket. She settled in and she said to her friend, "Take your time. I'll stay on the line with you. You are not alone. I am here. I am here." Tiny heard those words like an echo in her mind. You are not alone. I am here. You are not alone. I am here. I want you to pause and say this back to yourself, or repeat with me. You are not alone. I am here. In that moment, Tiny knew that she was nothing without Miriam's hands and heart and spirit. And she knew that what she wanted, what the world needed more than anything, especially someone simply famous for a big idea, was what Miriam had learned to give. So Tiny went to work. Instead of just spending her evenings spreading the gospel of you are not alone, she spent her night times doing it too. And her mornings, her afternoons. Pretty soon, she was spending every moment spreading this gospel until she became the breeze itself. And that's why there are no paintings of Tiny, no busts or holy books, just a breeze, a low voice, and many, many helping hands, loving hearts, and caring spirits. All over the world. If you listen closely, you can hear the echo. You are not alone. I am here. When water bottles are left in the desert for those who risk their lives to cross it, you are not alone. I am here. At the bedside of a dying person, you are not alone. I am here. In the jailhouse and the sanctuary, you are not alone. I am here. Separate and together, you are not alone. I am here. May it be so. I wonder, have you heard Tiny's voice yourself? Who has helped you feel that you aren't alone, even in a difficult situation? Where are your helping hands most needed right now? What is one caring action that you can take this week? Everyone, I invite you in joining and singing along our community blessing as we bless this caring, kind community full of multi-generational folks who are ever learning, ever growing, ever justice-seeking beloveds. Thank you all.
May your mind be open to new learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your heart know love and your hands do the work of justice as you go your way in peace. As you go your way in peace.
Our reading today is the poem Red Brocade by Naomi Shihab Nye. The Arabs used to say, when a stranger appears at your door, feed him for 3 days before asking who he is, where he's come from, where he's headed. That way, he'll have strength enough to answer. Or by then, you'll be such good friends, you don't care. Let's go back to that. Rice? Pine nuts? Here, take the red brocade pillow. My child will serve water to your horse. No, I was not busy when you came. I was not preparing to be busy. That's the armor everyone put on to pretend they had a purpose in the world. I refuse to be claimed. Your plate is waiting. We will snip fresh mint into your tea.
Each week, we take time to acknowledge the many joys among us and grieve our many sorrows and losses so that we might lift that burden for each other and receive the blessing of this community. This sharing and receiving is a form of hospitality. We invite you to write your joys and sorrows into the chat box and take a moment to read what others share. As we begin, please hold this joy from Diana Barrero Lowe. Her daughter, Kim, recovered from COVID and just published one of her wonderful stories. Diana also expressed gratitude that her and 9 others who were exposed to COVID along with her did not get sick. While you share in the chat, receive the healing balm of music from the musical Come From Away. The video starts with a brief contextual framing. The song is Prayer and is sung by Brentwood Presbyterian Church Virtual Choir.
Come From Away is a show based on a true story that takes a look at diversity and community as relationships develop among people who are stranded in Newfoundland as planes were suddenly grounded during the 9/11 attacks. In this frightening circumstance, they are scared, they are strangers, and they are united.
I suddenly realized what that song was from my dream. It was an old hymn from when I was a kid. I haven't been to church in years, but for some reason that song was in my head.
Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, your pardon, Lord. And where there's doubt, true faith in you. Make me a channel of your peace. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair and life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light and devastation only will love. Uyah se shalom aleinu. Ve'al koyal Israel ve'yemru amen.
There's a man here in town. He's lived here nearly his entire life. He heard that there was a rabbi diverted here, and he came to find me and tell me his story.
I was born in Poland, I think. My parents, they were Jews. They sent me here before the war started, and I still remember some of the prayers they taught me. As a boy, I was told never to tell anyone I was Jewish, not even my wife. But after what happened Tuesday, all those stories gone just like that. I had to tell someone.
During Al-Fajr, when most people are asleep, it is easier to pray. But at Derir, I can feel them watching me. Sometimes I catch them when they think I'm not looking, and I can see the fear in their eyes.
Shalom Aleinu, Miriam Israel. Shalom Aleinu, Miriam Israel. Oh, Master, grant that I may never see so much to leave and so as to console. To be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. All my soul, make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, there's
We hold the joys and sorrows of our beloved community. Alongside our silent prayers, we hold close to our hearts. Gathered up with the joys and sorrows of our nation and our world, we hold them all close, breathing them in and sending forth love.
For the last month or so, my household has been fascinated by the Broadway musical Come From Away, the show that includes that song we just heard. Come From Away is the story of what happened on September 11th, 2001, in a little town called Gander in Newfoundland, Canada. Gander is a small town with a large airport. And both town and airport were created when planes manufactured in the United States and headed to England and Europe to fight in World War II needed a place to refuel before making their transatlantic flight. In the post-war years, the Gander Airport continued to be a fueling stop for all kinds of air traffic for decades, until advances in jet planes meant that those planes could make the whole trip across the ocean without stopping. Still, pilots flying between North America and Europe continued to think of Gander as the lifeboat of the North Atlantic, the place to stop when there's an emergency, like a serious mechanical problem or a passenger who needs medical attention. During the Cold War years, flights originating behind the Iron Curtain would stop in Gander to refuel, and some of the passengers would get off the plane and seek asylum. Sometimes only the flight crew got back on the plane, and the town of Gander hosted dozens of refugees. During those years, the province took inventory of the various community buildings and how many people each could host. The Gander Airport had also prepared for a sudden influx of planes in the months leading up to the beginning of the year 2000. Maybe you remember the Y2K crisis scare. Not knowing how computer clocks would react to the year changing from 99 to 00, airport officials had mapped out the most efficient way to park up to 50 planes on Gander's runways in case those planes had to suddenly land if the computers became overwhelmed by that date change. So on September 11th, 2001, when the United States airspace closed in the wake of the terrorist attacks, Gander was ready. There were dozens of planes in the air needing a place to land, and most of them landed in Canada. Gander received 38 planes carrying almost 7,000 passengers and crew, which almost doubled the population of the town. But it's important to know now that Gander was ready in more than just those practical ways. Newfoundland has a harsh climate and a deep culture of hospitality to go with it. Jim DeFeed, who wrote a book about Gander's response on September 11th, puts it this way. He says, Newfoundlanders live like a people under siege, isolated on an island and powerless against the harshness of the weather. They have learned to count on one another for survival, neighbor to neighbor. It is a mentality that has been fostered over centuries, since the earliest settlers realized the only way to survive in this desolate but beautiful outpost was to work together. This understanding that taking care of one another is essential doesn't stop with fellow Newfoundlanders. The people of Gander received thousands of plain people and provided shelter, food, clothes, transportation, and some residents even invited folks home to use their showers. DeFeed writes that one Gander resident, Bonnie Harris, recently reflected on those days, now 20 years ago, and said, I'm sure you've heard this before, but it was not a big deal. What else were we going to do? Not help? Now, Newfoundland is not the only place where this spirit of hospitality thrives. Rules of hospitality are an ancient part of Middle Eastern cultures and have been imperatives for centuries. All the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, tell stories of the value of welcoming strangers, caring for them, offering hospitality. Each traveler is to be met with offers of food, water, and shelter. In some stories, the travelers are angels who offer blessings and miracles. Hospitality is important, the saying goes, because some have entertained angels unawares. But even beyond this implied possibility of reward, deep habits and practices of hospitality have shaped and continue to shape Middle Eastern culture. Ariel Sophia Barty, writing for Yes magazine, recalls this moment. On a solo backpacking trip across North Africa and the Levant, I once disembarked, hot and disheveled, from a bumpy shared taxi in Irbid, an industrial city in northern Jordan, not far from the Syrian border. Dust streaked my face. I was racked with thirst. Suddenly, I found myself greeted with an unexpected act of welcome. A stranger appeared, handed me a chunk of juicy watermelon, then vanished back into the crowd. It's something in our hearts. We can't help it, a Syrian grad student once told Barty, explaining Middle Eastern hospitality. These harsh climates, whether they are deserts or islands exposed to the sea, remind their residents that acts of hospitality can make a life or death difference. A traveler cannot be ignored. You cannot assume that the next household will be the one to receive them. When you meet a traveler, you are the one to offer hospitality. And this practice settles in to your heart. Or as the lyrics of one song in Come From Away put it, in speaking to travelers, if you're hoping for a harbor, then you'll find an open door. These practices this attitude, this story is on my mind now, in part because we've just passed the 20th anniversary of September 11th last month. It's the kind of event that continues to reverberate and to challenge our understanding of the world. The story of the residents of Gander and the surrounding Newfoundland communities helps to bring other parts of that day to light. In describing Newfoundland hospitality, Jim DeFeed writes, "They placed their lives on hold for a group of strangers and asked for nothing in return. They affirmed the basic goodness of people at a time when it was easy to doubt such humanity still existed." We live now in a time when we may be looking for evidence of the basic goodness of people. We certainly live in times that can feel like a harsh climate. There's literal accelerating climate change. There's cultural strife, suspicion of others, desperation, fear. And it is exactly in times and circumstances like these that hospitality practices are vital. It is a spiritual practice to help our hearts be generous and welcoming. Hospitality arose in another place and time, in the Benedictine monasticism of the Christian tradition. Benedictine monks follow a book called The Rule of Saint Benedict, a guide to the central values that guide life in a monastery. This book was written 1,500 years ago, in a time when the fall of the Roman Empire had shaken Europe into chaos. And Benedict required his monks to receive travelers because he knew that at that time there were no safe and affordable shelters available. People on a journey in Europe in the 500s were in danger of being robbed, brutalized, wounded, and lost. Monasteries saved lives when they opened their doors to strangers, write Daniel Homan and Lonnie Collins Pratt, authors of a modern guide titled Radical Hospitality. Hospitality is still a life-saving practice today. It is one on the most practical levels, of course. Offering cold water or hot coffee to someone who needs it can make a crucial difference. Or joining together to host suddenly grounded plane passengers in the school gymnasium and the churches and every other community building in town when folks are stranded for 5 days. But hospitality saves people on deeper levels too. Like most spiritual practices, we often describe hospitality in terms of actions that could simply be performed without too much thought. You can volunteer to serve food to folks experiencing homelessness. You can give money to organizations providing shelter. You can hold a coat drive. And doing these things does make a difference, yes. But what makes a bigger difference is opening up your heart as you do them. A spiritual practice is an action that changes us, often slowly, in the deepest part of our self. It opens us up to new understanding. It offers us deeper wells of patience and compassion. It shows us possibilities and gifts we might have missed. To practice hospitality in this way means letting others in. Now, not in a boundaryless way. We should not make ourselves truly unsafe, physically or emotionally. But for many of us, there is a larger margin for letting folks in than we might have thought. True hospitality requires you to make room for one more person in your heart. And then one more person who seems too different for you to ever connect with. One more person with whom you feel impatient. One more person whose situation makes you a little nervous. As you practice letting in others, strangers who seemed too mysterious to be understood, something else may happen. You may find space for the parts of yourself that have been mysterious to you. You may find patience with your own struggles. You may discover something new and wonderful. The poet Naomi Shihab Nye imagines saying to a stranger, "No, I was not busy when you came. I was not preparing to be busy." That's the armor everyone put on to pretend they had a purpose in the world. What if part of your purpose in the world is to welcome all who cross your path? You don't have to live in a desert or on a remote island or in a monastery. You simply have to choose to open your heart, even just a little bit, when someone comes knocking. The rest will follow, and you and we all will find ourselves more at home in this challenging world.
Please join me in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of my longing and lonely heart, help me travel through the barren borderlands that separate me from others. Teach me to willingly explore relationships with those who frighten or threaten me. Grant me the courage to risk confidently my own comforts that I might make others more comfortable. And when I am burdened by the isolating choices I have made, grant me the wisdom to invite a stranger to travel with me. Open my heart to my new companion's needs and desires until I relax my defensiveness and become a calming presence. As we travel, grant me the vision to notice how each step we take together moves us closer to the promised land, where all souls grow in hope and the resilience of love. Amen.
You can hold my hand when you need to let it go. I can be your mountain when you're feeling valley low. I can be your street light, showing you the way home. You can hold my hand when you need to let it go. Oh, I want a house with a crowded table and a place by the fire for everyone. Let's take on the world while we're young and able, and bring us back together when the day's done. If we want a garden, we're gonna have to sow the seeds, plant a little happiness, let the roots run deep. If it's love that we give, then it's love that we reap. If we want a garden, we're gonna have to sow the seed. Oh, I want a house with a crowded table and a place by the fire for everyone. Everyone's a little broken, and everyone belongs. Yeah, everyone belongs. I want a house with a crowded table and a place by the fire for everyone. Let us stay on the world while we're young and able, and bring us back together when the day is done. And bring us back together when the day is done.
Friends, I invite you to place your hands over your heart for our closing blessing. As we go our separate ways, may we remember the importance of listening and compassion. May we remember the power of courage and the blessings of gratitude. May we remember the warmth of hospitality and the resilience of love. May we continue to cultivate our relationships and welcome all who cross our paths. Blessed are we all. Go in peace.